Didn't know. Here we go.
There we go. Okay, let me start again. Welcome all to the fourth meeting of our Facilities and Community Relations Committee. Members of the committee are myself, Trustee Veronica Gallardo, and Trustee Peter Hasland. And Peter has not yet joined us yet, but I assume he will be joining us shortly. There he is. Okay. So let me begin with asking whether there are any members of the public who have general or comments that are not on the agenda. I understand that Rob Brown, I see he's with us, has a comment on just one second. On the first agenda item, is that correct?
I'm not looking at the agenda, so if it's the PE building, then yes.
Yeah, okay. So do we have anybody else on who has a public comment who perhaps didn't get an opportunity to send Paulina an email? If so, raise your hand or speak up. Otherwise, we will go to the first agenda item, which is 2.2, the phys ed building replacement. And so Rob, we'll hear your comment now.
Excellent, thank you. Hope you all are doing well. I just put my notes together, so I'm going to read it really quick. Shouldn't take more than a minute. As part of the new PE building is also the displacement of the Faculty Resource Center. As the hub of the faculty training on campus, the Faculty Resource Center, also known as the FRC, is seeking a timeline for relocation so we can better plan for the ongoing support of faculty who are creating new courses, modifying courses, and need training on technologies that will equitize their curriculum and support their instruction. We would like to be moving into a permanent location, not another temporary building. There are many buildings on campus that are underutilized, and there are computer labs that are no longer in use or underutilized. When we've tried to look at possible physical spaces in the past, we've been unsuccessful in doing so. Prior to COVID, the Faculty Resource Center has been a valued resource on campus. And for the past 2 years, the FRC has been integral in moving faculty into online instruction, supporting discussions for HyFlex teaching, developing training for equitable and accessible curriculum, while helping faculty pilot multimodal classrooms that support both face-to-face and remote instruction. We would like to be brought into future meetings for a permanent home for the FRC on campus, regardless of the outcome of the new PE building. Our current location is not effective for faculty. The Faculty Resource Center wants to be part of future planning for this relocation to ensure stabilization, to build a future that meets the growing demand of a HyFlex services and provides a hub for faculty professional development. What we have learned from the pandemic is that the way we support students and faculty has changed the way we provide services. A permanent home for the FRC that is centrally located and more easily accessed by a majority of faculty is key to the kind of support and hands-on training we provide. Thank you for your time.
And thank you, Rob. Let me just say before I ask if Dr. Murillo or Dr. Moss have any comments that we're a ways off from where we would have to start relocating people out of the current PE building. We don't have the money at the moment for it. The state has allocated a certain amount of money. And the amount that we have to raise, somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 million, we're discussing whether or not that would be part of a bond measure that we may or may not proceed with in November. So assuming that we have a successful bond measure in November and it passes, I think it's probably still some months if not years, before we would start relocating people in the transition before the current PE building is dismantled. Would that be good? Dr. Murillo, could you?
So,
comment on
yeah, my understanding is Vice President Moss has been working with the group to look for a permanent home. And that regardless of the PE building, and she can talk about the details, and we're fully supportive of having the FRC in a permanent home. So I'm sure that will happen in that planning. My understanding is that everybody is involved. So I'll let Vice President Moss take the details.
Thanks. I'll add just a little bit to that. Yes, COVID and everything that's been going on the last couple of years has definitely put a slowdown on the work we were doing with the FRC on communicating about what potential options would be for where they should move to. So I'm happy to restart those conversations with them in the very near future. We've actually been looking at all of our options for the swing space, as we call it, when we do a large scale modernization or construction project, the swing space options for the FRC, the security office, purchasing and warehouse, and also the PE programs that will be displaced during the construction. And we're starting right back up on that now. Actually, I've just been working with an architect and looking at proposals of how much that type of work would look like with a local architect. And we are talking about we do have planned that the PE building construction would begin next calendar year in 2023. So we do need to figure out the swing space options by the end of this year. So we're right there. Rob Brown must be reading my mind on this being a current topic that we'll be coming to his team about. Absolutely.
Sounds good. And to kind of jump on what Robert was saying too, is that regardless of when the construction actually starts on the actual building, our space was slotted to be moved because it's where the setup is going to happen. So before the building actually starts, we're still being moved. So just want to make sure that things are happening, and if we can avoid moving 2 or 3 times in 2 or 3 years, if we could just move once, that would be awesome.
I think that's the permanent home kind of thing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we have this item on our agenda today. We in prior meetings, we discussed, well, let me go back. We've got 3 scenarios we have discussed for a possible bond measure. Each of those includes our contribution to the PE building to match the state's contribution. And as I think everybody knows, there has already been work done in terms of architectural drawings and documents related to the PE building. But a question has, and those designs all relate to replacing the building at its current location. However, questions have been raised as to, is this the best location for the PE building? Why not look at our parking lots up on the upper part of the West Campus as a possible location, therefore making the transition easier, less need for swing space, although I think the swing space issue has been resolved even if we build at the current location. But for that reason, we invited Mr. Middlestead today to talk about what our options would be. Do we really even have an option to change the location without starting the process all over and setting back the project several years? Lindsay, you have your hand raised.
Yes, my real hand. Sorry, I'm more of a real hand than a virtual hand person. Trustee Miller, I apologize to redirect you. However, since we posted the board agenda, I was able to very nicely get someone from the city of Santa Barbara who's here to talk to us about sea level rise, Melissa Hetrick. And she had asked if she could go very early on in our meeting. And I'm wondering if we could do that now, if she's still there waiting. And then we can come back to the questions for Eric, if you don't mind, after we let Melissa go.
I think that's good. That's an issue that leads to this discussion, or it's part of this discussion. So be good to have that discussion first.
Great. Let me give a little more background. Welcome, Melissa. Thank you so much for coming on short notice, and we'll try to be cognizant of your time and let you go as soon as you're done presenting. So I asked Melissa to come and share with us what the city sea level rise plan entails, what they're working on in the interim, and discuss, where our building falls on their sea level rise map. If we've all seen it, it's been a little while, but I do have it handy that we can show everyone and kind of describe to us what that map really means and is telling us. So thank you so much for being here, Melissa. And I wanted to share, although I lost it, it's not handy, Melissa. I wanted to share what your title is, and I'm sorry I forgot it. If you don't mind telling us what your title is, that'd be great.
Sure. I'm the acting energy and climate manager for the sustainability department of the city of Santa Barbara.
So let me, if I might, let me just introduce this issue with a summary, and that is we were told somewhere in the last couple of years that there had been a study done that indicated that under current climate change predictions, it was possible that sea rise would be such that the ocean would be approaching our PE building, either in its current condition or current site or the replacement. And so that has been an issue that I thought had been resolved, but I'm glad you're here today to talk to us about that.
Yeah, so I can talk generally about our program, but I think the kind of long story short can be shown on, I'm going to share my screen. On this overlay of our sea level rise projection hazard map with your existing PE building here. The long story short is that with very, very conservative estimates that even by 2100 at the most extreme sea level rise scenarios, that building would not potentially be affected by sea level rise hazards. But just to go over, and just stop me if you don't want to hear about our overall program, if that long story short is enough for you. But in general, let me just pull up an old presentation I have. So in general, the city has had a number of studies going on since 2014 in relation to sea level rise. And the latest one was a 2021 sea level rise adaptation plan. And what that does is it lays out a phased approach for the city to plan for sea level rise based on monitoring of changed conditions and then taking action when certain triggers or thresholds are reached. So the plan is really specific about actions that need to happen in the next 10 years to prepare for sea level rise. And then it basically provides a structure for decision making for larger amounts of sea level rise. Like it basically outlines when certain decisions need to be made. And this whole approach kind of basically relies on shoreline monitoring. And so if you look at sea level rise projections, oh, you know what, I don't even have this, sorry. If you look at the sea level rise projections that the state has given us for Santa Barbara, there is a big range, and the middle line is what they are having us plan for in our long range plans. And it is a very, very conservative projection. So it has something like a 1 in 200 chance of occurring. And that projection is 0.8 feet by 2030, 2.5 feet by 2060, and 6.6 feet by 2100. This top line is a very, very extreme scenario that they now have proven is not likely. So that's it's no longer relevant. And then this bottom orange line is the much more likely scenario. So this line is between something like 20 to 50% probability. And you'll see that this is more like 0.5 feet by 2030. It looks about like 1.5 feet by 2060, and then 3 feet by 2100. So because there's a variance in projections, particularly out to 2100, that's why the city is taking the approach of monitoring as sea levels change, and then taking action when certain thresholds are reached. And many of those thresholds are around this 2.5 feet of sea level rise. That's when things really change. And so just quickly looking at the maps, this is 0.8 feet of sea level rise. It basically looks very similar to our existing hazards map. The dark blue shows flooding during the 100-year coastal storms. And the pink shows erosion during storms. And then the light aqua is where the high tide line is. And again, these maps are just showing hazards that would be exacerbated by sea level rise. It doesn't show all the flooding hazards in the whole city. So about 2.5 feet in sea level rise, you'll see that still most of the impacts of sea level rise are still south of Cabrillo Boulevard. And so while that might affect our waterfront area in a multitude of ways, prior to 2.5 feet of sea level rise, we really don't see impacts beyond Cabrillo. It's only at higher amounts of sea level rise, so 6.6 feet of sea level rise, where we see this bigger flooding map. And the dark blue that you see here, that's flooding during the 100-year coastal storm. And then this lighter blue is tidal inundation. So that's flooding during the regular high tide. So if you look at our FEMA flood maps now, so our flooding that occurs because of high rainfall or high river flooding events, it very much looks like this map. And the difference between this map and that we're seeing in front of you and the FEMA map is that essentially the flood area is the same. It's all just low-lying area. The difference is that north of Highway 101, it will just flood more frequently in the future, but similar depths to what we see now. And then south of Highway 101, it's a whole different story with frequent and flooding. So in any case, in this area along the waterfront, the adaptation plan, the biggest thing for SPCC, the recommendations in the near term are to raise the harbor breakwater and groins. And that is really key for Santa Barbara City College because the harbor breakwater essentially traps sand all in West Beach, and then it acts as a groin and it fills in lead better. And it prevents Santa Barbara City College and the lower West Side neighborhood from having more impacts from storms, erosion, and flooding. So prior to the harbor being here, there was a lot more flooding that occurred in this neighborhood and in this area. And so moving forward, and especially in the near term, the projects to raise the harbor breakwater and shore up the harbor breakwater and groins will be very important for Santa Barbara City College to follow. So again, these maps are what would happen if we did nothing, and they're very high amounts of sea level rise and very conservative. And just so you know, we did actually just receive about $2.1 million in funding from the California Coastal Commission to develop feasibility studies and concept plans for raising the harbor breakwater and groins. and also for moving a bunch of sewer mains and other infrastructure that's located south of Cabrillo Boulevard here out of the flood zone. So we are basically going through that near-term list and finding funding for those projects. So with that, we can go back to the map. So this is basically the 6.6 feet of sea level rise hazard map overlaying over, it looks like your architect's rendering of the new or replaced building here. And you'll see that even the flooding during the 100-year coastal storm at 6.6 feet of sea level rise is below the existing building.
And Melissa, that's assuming, I think, as you said, that nothing is done in terms of mitigation action.
Yes, yeah. So in the next, so I didn't get into this, sorry. As part of the adaptation plan process, we did a comprehensive update of our coastal land use plan, which at Santa Barbara City College does have to conform to. And that did change development regulations to factor in sea level rise. And because of the way the phasing is and the potential impacts, the way that that land use plan sets up development regulations is that south of Cabrillo Boulevard, every new development needs to do very detailed site-specific sea level rise and hazard analysis, basically showing how they'll adapt over time and if they need a seawall or whatever needs to happen. And north of Cabrillo Boulevard, new developments are just required to meet our existing floodplain regulations, which are very conservative now and require building or floodproofing 2 to 3 feet over base flood elevation. So a very conservative floodproofing. And so, but those are regulations that the Santa Barbara City College would already be subject to. So that's not a change in development regulations north of Cabrillo Boulevard. But the Coastal Commission has signed off on that being the interim development regulations for that area north of Cabrillo Boulevard, while we employ these other mitigation measures and set up a monitoring program and look at potential options for the long term.
Okay. Trustee Haslund or Trustee Gallardo, do you have questions for?
Well, I do. There on the picture we're looking at right now, it says yellow line shows view corridor. Which direction are we looking at? It's a little confusing.
I think this is from our architect. So I think that was just Steve Key trying to show that if you're up on the bridge or in that new green area that's going to be where currently there's the FRC, that you'll have a view of kind of the ocean and a very different view than the way the campus looks right now. Whereas if you were up on the bridge, you see a building.
No, I see. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry to distract from this.
It's okay. It's just a minor thing. I would imagine that any coastal municipality is doing something like this, taking account of the possible and trying to make a best guess between, you know, the minimum likely and the maximum likely, and drawing a line between those two that says this is roughly what we expect. I'm assuming that's true. Tell me if it is. But then I'm assuming that most municipalities would be doing that. And are they straying very much from what we're doing?
So Santa Barbara is very ahead on this issue. So there's several jurisdictions throughout the state that have gotten money from the Coastal Commission to do vulnerability assessments and adaptation plans. There's only a few that have finished adaptation plans, and ours is the only one that's gotten approved by Coastal Commission. And we're one of only a couple jurisdictions that's kind of into implementation phase as opposed to initial planning phase. So we're actually quite ahead of most other jurisdictions. But I guess I would say that we are not inventing the wheel here totally. And the projections that we are to plan for are set by the state, and they're reevaluated every 5 years. And in addition, the hazard maps we're looking at, those are USGS maps that everybody is using now. So a lot has come, there's a lot happened in the last few years. So USGS, between USGS and the state, all of this information is already available online. So it's just a matter of each jurisdiction really putting together their to-do list and starting to knock off the projects that need to happen. And we are really lucky that the entire waterfront of the city of Santa Barbara is publicly owned. The whole area south of Cabrillo Boulevard is publicly owned. It gives us a lot of options and ease of ability to address issues associated with sea level rise, because while there are many stakeholders involved, really the final decision making is only one body.
Looks like Shoreline Drive is underwater. Is that?
Yes, at 6.6 feet of sea level rise, Shoreline Drive is anticipated to be impacted by erosion in multiple locations. So I didn't actually show you guys the maps for the bluff portion of the city. Again, I think the key for your area really is the harbor breakwater really is an asset to the city and keeping our beaches during this time frame. We are not anticipating huge amounts of beach loss along the waterfront. It's more a problem of flooding during storms. In the bluff areas, those beaches that are below the bluffs, it's anticipated that fairly soon, so I guess by 2 feet of sea level rise, we would lose essentially all of our bluff back beaches to flooding. So they basically be flooded out.
And that would include our bluffs.
Yes, and then it's anticipated that bluff erosion will increase or accelerate.
But again, just to be clear, the slide that we have up right now shows what would happen by the year, could happen by the year 2100, almost 80 years from now, if no action was taken to mitigate the issue between now and then.
Yes, and this is definitely a very conservative projection as far as timing of when the 6.6 feet of sea level rise will occur. The likely scenario for 2100 is actually more like 3.5 feet of sea level rise. So it's likely that we have much more time than 2100 before this map occurs.
Okay, I'm a little confused of your use of the term conservative, because that would seem to indicate that it might get worse. And maybe that's not what you mean.
I mean that when I say conservative, I mean that it's risk averse. So it means that it has a low likelihood of happening.
It's a worst case scenario.
It's a worst case scenario, yes.
Okay.
And actually, they just are updating the projections that I just showed you on the map, and they're finding that they were pretty spot on. That they're finding that the projections for 2100 are pretty much the same but they're anticipating that sea level rise is actually occurring slower right now up to the year 2060, and then it will ramp up faster. So by 2100, we'll kind of end up in the same place as we thought, but just kind of different accelerations. So you'll hear a lot that, oh, the projections have changed so much, but to be honest, they actually haven't changed that much over time if you really look at an apples to apples projection.
Mhm.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Do we have any other questions? Trustee Gallardo.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you, Melissa, for the information, and then just to Peter and Robert for us here on the committee. A lot of this information, we talked about it when the architects, I think it's fine. I actually went ahead and looked at even all of the really nice golf courses along the Pacific Ocean to see what they're doing. And so when you think of these multi-million-dollar estates and golf courses, and if they're still good, renovating, moving forward, then I think we're all going to be good too. So it's just kind of good too to just see what other people are doing along the Pacific Ocean to give everybody a sense of calm that it's going to be okay. And you live along the Pacific Ocean, Robert, so I think you're going to be okay too.
I'm quite a ways up, but that's that's true. Okay, well, if nobody else has a question, we'll let you go. And again, thank you very much for sharing your time with us today. It's very helpful.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
so
Vanessa.
much. This is really helpful.
Thanks.
Okay, I guess we're ready to move on to our next agenda item, which is the bond polling survey draft review.
We need to move back and talk with Eric Middlestead now
Oh.
on the PE building.
Thank you very much. I apologize. So the transition to Eric is, Eric, this was an issue. One of the reasons the sea level rise is an issue that has caused some to think we should look at other sites. But then the issue becomes, well, what if we decided to go to another site? How would that affect the timing and ability to keep the state involved with their contribution?
Well, thank you for inviting me today. It is a tricky process with the state. You know, it is a big bureaucracy, and we needed to, when we submitted this final project proposal, we had the building sited on the plan where it is now. One of the items that where the state is very particular, and they call it a scope change, is if we decide to move the building, if we decide to change the number of floors in the building or any different spaces within the building. So it is not permissible to move the building once that has been funded. Our options would be, if we absolutely had to do it, would be request a scope change, which most often, more than not, what they basically say is give back the money, resubmit another final project proposal with your new location, and go through the competitive process again. And so it really is not an option to relocate that building at this point in time. And some of the things also to think about if we were to consider that, you know, the project is at the division of the state architect now. So it's all but drawn up and just getting final approvals, which takes a while. But there's millions of dollars of underground infrastructure that are feeding this. You know, there's a lot more work than just simply picking it up on a drawing and moving it somewhere else. So it really is not an option from the state's perspective at this point in time. So we're thankful to hear that report that it doesn't look like there's an issue with it from the sea level rise, because it would be a big challenge to try to move it from the state's perspective.
So would we essentially have to start the process all over again if we decided to move to a new location?
Not 100% over, but it's about 90% over. You know, if we think about the process from concept to completion, we first submit an initial project proposal, and a year later, the state says we agree with that concept, do a final project proposal, and then that proposal gets funded and there has to be money available to fund it, which right now there's none of, right? They would give the money that we would turn back to someone else in line that's ready to go. And so if we were to give the project up or have to start over, we would start at the initial project proposal would be already approved. They would allow us more than likely to submit a final project proposal. So it would skip 1 year from starting over. But for all intents and purposes, you know, it's a very long process. Right now, we are writing final project proposals for 2024 governor's funding. And I should also say, if we were to end up giving the project back, the district is only allowed to submit one final project proposal per year. And we're already working on another one. So one would have to take priority over the other. Again, kind of dropping it back another year or taking the place of the current final project proposal that's being developed right now. So it is a considerable amount of time to start over. And they also would not give us any more money for the planning that has already occurred. They would assume that they're not going to pay for planning twice. And if we were to move the building, we have to think about it from that architect's perspective. They would need to start over and resubmit to the Division of the State Architect once they did have the building in its new site with all of the underground infrastructure and the above ground infrastructure. It's simply a lot more than just moving the building from one place on a campus to another.
So if we were to, if we were applying, which I believe we are, for state funding for the new physical science building, and we decided to move the PE building, we wouldn't be able to proceed with the physical science building application. Is that what you're saying?
For the most part, there's a timing issue. If we were to give it up, let's say today, then we can only submit one final proposal this year at your June or July meeting. And therefore, one of the two would get bumped. If the gym was a higher priority, than physical science would get delayed one more year. Or if physical science was the higher priority because of timing, then the PE project would get delayed one more year, because we can only submit one final project proposal and get one funded per year. And I say that because even if, in my opinion, if we were to, let's say the decision was made today, do whatever you can to move the building, I don't think there's enough time to start a new final project proposal for the gym to get it done in time for this year's cycle. We've been working on the physical science final project proposal for a few months now. And so it's 75%, 80% complete. If we were to start over on the physical science today, I would tell you there's probably not enough time to get it done this cycle. So, you know, there is a lot of timing that would go into this. And the other thing is to take into consideration is it's not a guarantee. When you start over, you compete over. And while the physical science project is a safety project, it gets kind of more points, not points, but more priority. The chancellor's office would also look at us to go, you know, you realize this is a safety project. It's not just a normal project. Like the physical science is not a non-safety project. So the chancellor's office would have concerns also because of the type of project that it is. You know, their goal is to get it done as quick as possible because of the mitigation of the safety issues.
So Veronica, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Eric. It's good to see you. Athletics to me, for as long as I've known it, it's one of our strongest student success programs on campus. And I agree with everything Eric's been saying. And for members of the public, Eric gave us a really good presentation where he in detail went through all of this. It was a really long board meeting, a lot of really great handouts. And so this process has been very laborious. And Robert, too, there was a lot of lobbying from our fellow trustees across the California community colleges for the governor to release all the Prop 51 funding for all capital outlay projects. So this has really been a collective community college effort to really get this funding into the colleges. We also returned the campus center money once. So it's sort of, to me, a good faith, you know, that do what you say and say what you do. We committed to this project. I'm confident with the whole C-level staff. My concern or my questions are really more around the funding and where we are with that. I have all the numbers of what we thought this building was going to cost back in 2014, and then what we thought it was going to cost in 2018. And so here we are in 2022. So I'm more concerned. My questions are around the funding and what we can do and where we're at with that. But I'm eager to get this project off the ground. Like I said, it's a very strong student success program. And so the students deserve it. So I'm really excited to give it to them.
Kathy O'Connor, you have your hand raised.
I do. Can you hear me, Dr. Miller?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate you calling on me, and I certainly appreciate the information that we've been given today. And thank you to Trustee Gallardo for saying such positive things about our program and our building. First of all, there is no way that by 2100 that regardless of what happens with the tide, that building probably would be useful anyway. Our buildings are lasting about 50 to 60 years at the most. And so it probably that the tide issue is not really a problem for us. Moving the building would be tremendously difficult for us. We need to have our building close to the track and field. I just can't even imagine putting this building anywhere else and risking losing the money from the state for the third time, mind you. We turned down money for the SOMA building as well as the student services or the student center. So I can't imagine they'd ever want to give us money again. So I just can't imagine not going forward with this. They've done a great job in presenting this to DSA and the state. The design is amazing. And I think it is a safety issue for us. I'm sitting in my office now. I pray every day there's no earthquake. I've always said probably someday they'll just find me in the rubble here in my office, which is just fine. But I don't think that would be good for anyone else. So I really hope that we can continue with this project as soon as possible, and get it off the ground and keep it where it is. Thank you.
Kathy, thank you very much for your comments. Any other questions or comments on this topic? Well, not seeing any, I will thank Eric Middlestead for his taking time to meet with us today and discuss what is a very important issue for us. Dr. Murillo, I saw your hand raised.
Yeah, sorry, I'm so slow. Since I've been here, this has been an issue. I mean, the minute I walked in the door, I got hit with the PE facility, whether we should be moving it, whether we shouldn't, whether it needed to be in another location. I've met with people in the community. I've walked the college with architects and Lindsay and, looked at and read all the reports. I have to say to the board, the sea level rise presentation today for me literally solidified that I believe we need to move forward with it. And to move it, I agree with Kathy on this. I've gone all over this campus, and to move that building away from the fields would be a hardship on our athletic programs and our students that it doesn't make sense to me. I've built colleges for years, and bond programs and athletic facilities and all of this stuff, and to split a building away from the fields and where it services. I am really concerned that if we did that, I think we don't have a good rationale for it. So anyway, that's just my opinion. And I feel like it's a good opinion because I was a vice chancellor and a CBO for 11 years and did this stuff. And I think this is the right thing to do. So that's my 2 cents for today. I would like to invite anybody that has any more questions. We are going to have a meeting to go over the seismic pieces. Again, the sea level issue for anybody that has any more concerns. And I know one of our trustees has some more concerns. So we are going to set a meeting up to do that, just to go through all of this and everything we've already done. So I hope that's acceptable to this committee, but I just had to speak up after studying this for 7 months.
Thank you, Dr.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Peter.
I was just going to agree that that sounds like a sound approach. The arguments that Kathy made were compelling. That though there may be good arguments for moving the facility, the larger argument has to do with proximity to the field. And unless there's a compelling argument that pulls the rug out from under that first assumption. The quite secondary to that is the state's operating process that seems, on one level, I can really understand it. They have to have a process that goes step by step because we are not the only rodeo in the state of California. There are lots of other colleges that want money to build similar programs and different programs. So, I understand why they have to do that. On the other hand, the one element that I'm not particularly happy about is that over time, those colleges and personnel who are making these decisions will go through a process of discovery. They may find something that just was not right, and hopefully the state's process is flexible enough so that there can be a response to those concerns. And I see Eric's hand up, so maybe I should see what you have to say first.
Eric, just 1 second before you, I saw your hand up as well. I'd just like to close the circle here for the trustees. I strongly support moving ahead with this project at the location. And I would add that the design that has been done, I think, is fantastic. It is a fantastic building that has been designed. And I think it's not just going to benefit our physical education department, but it's going to, the way the architects have worked it into the campus as a whole, I think is going to be a really, really big improvement to the physical structure at the campus and allowing students to use this facility for things other than just pure physical education. And then finally, I would note, I don't know how much we've already spent on the architects, but that's not an unimportant amount of money that has been spent and would be essentially gone and down the drain if we change this, because you would really have to start with entire new plans if you moved it to a new site. But Eric, you wanted to comment.
Sure, a couple of tidbits. I am looking at the budget sheet. I can tell you that these 2 phases that take you up to bidding, it's been about $2.4, $2.5 million we're talking about. So that would be what's at stake to start over. That's one point I just wanted to make sure we were aware of. Trustee Haslam, I will say this, early on when we did the final project proposal, I do this with 35 districts across the state, nearly half of the community college system. I know the rules, so I push my districts for sound decisions early on so we don't have things what are called scope changes, because it is so drastic in the chancellor's office. I've seen projects lost. I've seen at best when they do approve a scope change, it has to go through the chancellor's office, the Department of Finance, and the State Public Works Board. And any one of those elements can stop the project and lose the money. And that happens. So I do everything I can to challenge the districts to make sure. And in this case, no different. I recall saying, are you sure? Because, swing space is not cheap. It's an issue for have swing space. So one of our strategies is always to build the building in a new location. So you do have a swing space taken care of, like the physical science project. When you see that, Vice President Moss pushes me on that all the time, and we are going to save the district money by putting it in a new location and then demolishing the old building, saving the district swing space cost. When I pushed the district on that topic early on, the answer was no, there's no other place it really can go to remain functional. as one member mentioned, you know, to remain functional with the proximity to the stadium and just that side of campus. So I just wanted to make sure you were aware that there was a lot of due diligence early on, and some of these questions were posed. And many of them, you know, what I'll say is we need to make a sound decision now because they're not going to allow us to make changes in the future. And even then, when it first started, Vice President Moss pushed me again and said, can we move this? Because she was getting some pressure. And I have to be the bad guy. That's my job, and say no. But I will tell you, I usually make another phone call to Sacramento just to make sure that nothing's changed or there's not some code that would allow it to give us that flexibility. But there are projects each year that if they are approved, it takes up to a year to get that approval, all the while your project is up in the air. And if they say no, then it's over. And so we did, I believe, prudent planning here. I believe we did our homework, and we did look at possibly moving the building, and it just didn't seem like to be the best option for the district.
And I would add that the architects have cleverly created a plan whereby we avoid the swing space cost by building this in phases. So I can't explain it all right now, but as I understand it, we shut down one half of the PE building and move certain functions to the other half while the first half is being built. And I was really impressed with their planning in that regard and incorporating it into the design.
Well, for the record, I'm sold.
Okay, good enough.
Okay, one last thing on this thing. So I just want to make sure I close the circle on this when we leave this topic today. This is part of the reason I really think that we have to explore a general obligation bond this year, if at all possible. And I'm not saying we have to do it. I'm just saying we really need to do the exploration. And if we can't make that happen this year, then I think we're going to have to, and I want this group to know, we're going to have to think about how we finance what we're going to do with, and the money we have in our facilities outlay fund, and how to manage that. But I think we need to make this happen, even if we have to put off to 2024 a bond request. There are ways to get this project done that we could actually pay it off if we did a bond in 2024. So I've done this before, but we're going to have to be creative and thoughtful. So I'm just throwing that out there for everybody to think about for the future conversations.
Thank you very much. And again, Eric, thank you. Thank you for your time. We really appreciate it. It's been very helpful.
Sure.
So unless I hear from anybody else, I think we're ready to move on to the other, well, the second agenda item, which is the bond polling survey draft review. And Dr. Murillo, could you just bring us up to date on where we are in that regard?
Yes, I'm happy to do that, and Lindsay can chime in too. So we took your input from the last meeting. We updated the polling document, and we sent it to an attorney to look at that does bond work. And we got back some suggestions. We're making a couple of little changes, and then we're going to be ready to go. And they have recommended that we don't really put this out publicly. So at this point, I think we're ready to go. Staff is going to finalize it with True North, and we would start polling. I'm pretty excited.
When would we actually go into the field and start asking questions? In the next couple of weeks?
I think next week.
Next week, okay. And then, as I recall, we anticipated having this completed. I'd have the information presented it to us by sometime in May. I think it was latter part of May. Is that still the timeline?
Yes, I think they said it's going to take some time to get 600, people to participate.
Okay. Any questions on that?
Ellen has her hand up.
I see that. I was going to ask if you or Veronica had any comment on that matter. If not, I will ask Ellen O'Connor.
Well, I would say very briefly that I'm very impressed with the survey. I mean, it gives real evidence of somebody who actually knows what he's doing. And I have to confess to you that when we went for Measure E, I did not have the same feeling. So this is done by a pro.
And I'm excited because I think we're going to get a lot of rich data that will not only tell us whether we're in a good position to pursue a bond measure, assuming it tells us yes in that regard. It's also going to tell us how we need to communicate with the community, which is probably the more important information that we're going to get from this poll. So Ellen O'Connor, you're on. Do you have a question or comment?
I do, and thank you for acknowledging the opportunity to speak here. I did go through the polling questions, and I had a couple of questions on, there are three specifically, because they relate to the physical education replacement building, or at least they seem to relate to the physical education replacement project. And that one, a question N1, the question had to do with the public's feeling regarding providing equal access to physical education and athletic facilities for men and women. And I'm not quite sure what the thought process is regarding that particular question. If the question is regarding access to facilities, then I think strongly that the reference to gender should be taken out because it's access to all persons. Gender is not really an issue. So I'm not quite sure what the impetus is for that particular question. And it seems to me that it should be if providing equal access to physical education and athletic facilities for all students. The second question I have had to do with, in my review of this, I did not see any polling questions that asked about the impact of the physical education replacement building. Didn't have to be in that regard, but there wasn't any question that dealt with the support of the community for the replacement building as it relates to providing an emergency shelter during emergencies. And so we are a Red Cross shelter that serves the community. The new building would significantly improve what we offer to the community in times of disaster. And so to me, that was an important point that I'd like to see us get some community input for, as well as there was no question on the survey that asked about the public support for this building or the concept of this building as it relates to community access through Park and Recreation. And as we know, the Park and Recreation Department is a significant user of the facilities that are in that replacement building. So those are the three questions I have. Again, N1 regarding gender and the lack of questions regarding community support for a building that does have, it will provide community access in times of emergency as well as for recreation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Those are very good comments. I don't know whether it's too late, Dr. Murillo or Lindsay, for us to at least have a quick discussion with our pollster on those issues, whether any modifications could be made at this point.
I've got Ellen's comments, and I suspect from my last life, the issue around in one is around Title IX, but we'll verify that. That would be, I think, we didn't even talk about that particular one because I'm so used to that question on polls.
Yeah.
So the other ones we will talk with the consultant about a little deeper. There is a methodology behind the way he sets up the polling, and we don't hit certain pieces of public support for certain kinds of things. But I think the issue around emergency, the emergency planning, shelter kind of stuff, we'll look into that. Okay.
Very good. We have a couple members of the public who have comments, but Trustee Gallardo also has her hand raised. So I'd ask Trustee Gallardo if you have a question or comment.
Just to add to what Ellen commented, and when 2018, when we talked about this project, that was a big part of it. And unfortunately, we had our local natural disasters that then even gave light to the need of what we would need in the community. So yes, Kendra, that idea of course, having the children in Parks and Rec and really Santa Barbara City College through athletics has always been an outreach to the community, there was such a rally and support for this project from its inception. It truly was going to be a young elementary all the way to senior citizen community access, and then having a facility that the community could go to. Of course, as a college, we need to have some other policy changes, but that's another conversation. But Ellen is accurate in that in 2018, that was central to the conversation to make sure that the community had access to this building as a hub for teaching, learning, health, and well-being.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Veronica. Dr. Amy Smith, I believe your hand is raised. Do you have a comment for us?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Yeah, I just at the previous meeting where proposing this poll be generated, I brought up the point that there's a lot of unhappiness in the community about the discrimination that's taking place. And I think it would be very, very wise to end that discrimination before putting out even a poll to ask the sentiment of the community about supporting a bond measure and increase in taxes. And I think you may not be in touch with a lot of the people in the community who are very concerned about the vaccine mandate. What I understand is that people are being asked to pay for their own testing now because the funding is gone, but there was plenty of funding to pay people to be enticed into this experimental, no long-term testing, phase 3 trial aborted vaccine, so-called, this gene therapy treatment. But now there isn't money to equal the playing field for people who have religious objections to being an experimental subject to a gene therapy, to an unknown, uncertain outcome medical intervention. And so these are the kind of policies that make people feel like City College isn't really for the whole community anymore. I've had homeschool parents ask if they would be able to attend the big event where people go to, high school students go to learn about the summer courses and register in person, whether they would be allowed to go as the parents or if the students would be able to attend. I know people that aren't bothering with dealing with the college. My own daughter is online taking classes still, but really her favorite math teacher isn't doing online, but doesn't want to go through that kind of abuse and harassment and have her DNA collected and given to who knows who and paid for, perhaps sold, her privacy, and certainly doesn't want to have this this gene therapy intervention that is not working. Actually, it's not even for the current variant, and yet people are being encouraged to get these boosters, and the mandate remains in place. So it seems like you're very out of touch with a portion of the public, and if the city is supposed, the college is supposed to be for the whole community, that you really have to address this problems. And I think there's also people who are very concerned with the way President Goswami was pushed out. That hasn't been addressed in any constructive way, as far as I can see.
Dr. Smith, if I might interrupt a moment, the issue here has to do with polling. And while I know you have additional comments and concerns, I'd like to keep us focused on poll. I heard you suggest other items you think that should be in the poll, and I think we've heard that.
Well, yeah, I think it would be good to include these issues that people are upset about. And I think that it would be good to actually make some of those things moot by solving them in advance. And that's before seeking a bond, before even putting out a poll. I think it would be good to take that step and say that City College is not for discrimination, that we do respect people's privacy, medical privacy, their right to decide whether or not to take this ineffective and actually dangerous product. And the fact that people, that the board refuses to reverse that is very concerning, and now even punish people and make them pay money for something that's totally unnecessary if they did secure an exemption. So, I know that you guys look at it differently, but you're supposed to be, providing a college for everyone in the community. And there are people who are looking at things and looking beyond just what the CDC says and looking at the corruption that the CDC experiences because of the capture of the corporate interests. And that's a historical problem. It's not a brand new problem, but it's raising its head with a vengeance now because it's affecting the lives of people all over the country in very invasive ways over their work and their school. And it's very upsetting to young people. Suicides are up, enrollment is catastrophically down. So you might think I'm just a weirdo, whatever, but there are many, many people who share my concerns. And this is the message that I bring to you, take it or leave it. I expect many of you won't listen. I know some do and fight for everyone to be included, but that's my message. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. We have Justin, I don't have a last name. You have your hand raised. If you could give us your comments, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, kind of along the same lines, I would say that it feels like the campus is inaccessible still to 40% of your students. Teachers, even who aren't vaccinated, are not allowed to come on. And I think you even have a board member that you're not even allowing on campus still. So before you raise taxes for the general community, maybe you should put that out there. Maybe you should is this a vaccinated only college? So maybe put that on the sign so we know that, unvaccinated people that are in town, 40% of your students have to go somewhere else. So you're going to raise taxes while still not providing a service to many disadvantaged people who will just make another choice. They'll just go to they'll go work in a field, or they'll go do something else, because why are they going to mess with your crazy mandates? You need to stop this. You need to look at what you're doing to your community and not from the lens of a politician. Look at this as from a human being lens, and look at all the humans that are being affected by your decisions and your inaction and your very biased viewpoints. There is another side of this, and it's a good portion of us. So the reason we're talking about this during a tax thing, before you raise our taxes on our community, is because you're not providing the service that you're supposed to the community that you're charging. There's a problem there, a big problem. How long will this last? How long will you people lock people out of the college and then expect us to pay more? And that's okay. Can you put that on the thing, on the survey? If we don't allow unvaccinated people back, will that be okay? Would a bond be okay with you? Let's get a real question on that survey. It's pretty ridiculous. And seeing how you're spending all of our other money, millions of dollars on CRT and DEIA. There's a contract on Thursday with not even a contract. It just says you're paying $145,000 for DEIA with no strings attached. How many millions of dollars will you spend on that stuff with no accountability and no metric to show us what it's given us? This is fiscal responsibility, and you're the community relations committee. You need to think about the community, not just your own butts, not just your own job. Think about what you're doing to your constituents, to your stakeholders. Do you understand? Shake your head if you understand that people have another viewpoint that you've ignored for years. And you still are. You're still hurting people. I have people calling me just So upset. One poor lady, this poor girl goes to City College. She was going to her second year of nursing school. You guys forced her to get the job, or she has no career. This poor girl was so torn. She cried for a whole week, calling me every night saying, what do I do? How do I fight this? What do I do? But guess what? Robert Miller had to decide to force her to not go to school or take this experiment. That's where we're coming from. That's not one story. That's not just one. That's so many stories. 40% of your students. Do you understand that? When will you get that? It's frustrating. You can hear it's frustrating from us. I'm frustrated. I hate it. I hate getting all the calls that I get about all of the poor students and faculty and teachers that are in your system that are getting screwed every day because of your inaction.
Thank you very much for your comments. There are two other people who'd like to comment. In fairness to them, I'd like to move on. Elizabeth Mortensen, do you have a comment?
Yes, hello. Yes, I would like you to open up the survey with more questions on this. Hello and thank you all, because I know you're working hard being here. I am also an educator and I am very familiar with Veronica and we have taught together. And I appreciate the school and the Promise program. My son in 1 year got his AA degree. Last fall, he started UCSB and is now currently paying for a full load at SBCC so that he can play golf and represent your school. His passion is golf. He loves it. We really appreciate his RE, his religious exemption, being granted. But I want to address as a parent and a mom, with his permission, as he being a young adult and giving me this permission to share today on this board meeting, that he has received extreme prejudicial discriminatory treatment because our family has a belief system in which we do not want to put something like this into his body. And that should be our right. And yes, you've granted that religious exemption, but he has been forced and told to wear a mask outdoors earlier in this season. And so he's the only golfer having to wear a mask outdoors. I mean, talk about putting a tattoo on somebody's face. His name is highlighted in the check-in list when he has to check in at the college. His name is highlighted there. Why is his name the only one highlighted? Oh, because you haven't gotten the shot. He shouldn't be treated in a way or viewed as a threat. He is not. He is healthy. He is a strong, healthy, good person. And then he also is forced to wear a wristband at your school when he did the check-in, when all the sports did, saying vaccinated, a bright neon wristband saying vaccinated. And he came back to my classroom, and you can tell, yes, I teach, I'm in a classroom right now. He came back so upset. Mom, this is what they forced me to wear on campus, as if I'm advertising for this shot for this school. Can't he represent your school in a good way? He's going to UCSB full-time, that's his college, and he takes full-time at SBCC, so he plays golf and represents you all. Can't he do that and not have to have gotten a shot? He tests every week, you know, spitting into saliva to do that. And I'm saying, where is a place for that child on your campus? He has to do online classes. Okay, and that's fine, but isn't a part of what we need for this generation to have is the social interactions? Isn't this supposed to be a school that's for all? And so I just come to you as a mom and say, please, you know, open up your survey and address the students, and that this shouldn't be so fear-based. There's nothing they're going to do to hurt each other if they don't have a shot. If you feel like you want to take the shot, then shouldn't you feel protected? I just really, my heart is so sad that this is the message he gets from the school and from so many. So thank you for hearing me and for realizing this is experimental, and it should be his right to do what he wants to do with his body, and that this college should address more than forcing young children to do things they don't want to do, or having them advertise for you all with a shot wristband, you know. So thank you for hearing me.
Thank you, Elizabeth. We have one more comment from Maria Kastner. If you could address your comments to the polling issue, please.
Hello, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay. Well, I I'm going to address the comment towards the taxes that are required from us in case, you're basically petitioning the public if they want to pay more taxes. And I must, I didn't really prepare a statement, but I'd like to make a couple points. The previous speakers have touched on some of them. And one is I've watched this Santa Barbara City College and how they went about religious exemptions when it came to vaccinations.
Maria,
And-
I'm sorry to interrupt, but our topic here has to do with doing a survey to determine whether we might proceed with a bond measure. So
I understand, and I want to get back to the bond measure because I want to talk about the incompetence of the bureaucracy at SBCC when it comes to the rule of law. And once again, we stood by and watched how your organization doesn't even know that every single individual under the United States Constitution, and you can check it on the EEOC website, is entitled to a religious exemption for a COVID vaccine, okay? Number two, I have a child with a disability. I got some insight this week from a Hispanic caseworker about the Hispanic community in this town. They are afraid to come to any governmental institution because of the very issues that have arisen from the entire COVID policies. So you already have a Hispanic community that's already afraid to come to a governmental institution because they know they have already been disadvantaged because they are scrambling to find out what their rights are. And you are clearly discriminating against people that question the government bureaucrats. There is no consensus in the scientific community. You're an educational institution. As an educational institution, you are to rigorously question any policies. Does anybody on this board know who Stephen Petty is? He's the nation's top expert in PPE and masks. I suggest everybody go watch his videos on YouTube about masks and what masks do and what they don't do, and how masks are supposed to be worn and handled. And so, it's like, and then the entire student population we're dealing with, they are not at all at risk. There are no statistics that say these people are dying, or that they are at risk. Everybody's had the Omicron in town, and you guys are acting like the virus, this virus has mutated to a less dangerous version. You're acting like something is going to get really dangerous again. I haven't seen the science. It's time that you're going to clean up your act. We, the people, have to hold you accountable. And when you want our money and you're going to tax us, then you need to deserve that money. You need to show that you're science-based and that you're adhering to the rule of law. And I suggest you check out the EEOC website. Every single person in this country is entitled to a religious exemption. They should study their rights. It's on the EEOC website. All the cases, all the Supreme Court cases are on there. And it's time that we, the people, say enough is enough. We're taxed enough already. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. We can now move on to our final agenda item, which is discussion of the retention of a bond public relations consultant. And I would just like to say before we go there that I'm sure we'll have a process to make this selection, although I think we have a good candidate in our pollster who has really impressed me with his understanding of our situation and impressed me with his ability to identify the messaging that we're going to have to employ to be successful. With that, I'd ask Dr. Murillo or Lindsay whether you have some background on this before we get into the discussion.
Yeah, we will be glad to address, and I see Trustee Gallardo's hands up, so.
Yes. Veronica?
Thank you, Kindred. Thank you, Robert. I wanted to say thank you to Ms. Mortensen for humbly trusting us with her son's story, and to say that you're not the only mother, and this is the one issue that has affected every social class, every gender, ethnicity in our community. And I want to thank you, everyone, for speaking, because I think that you care enough to be here, and Santa Barbara City College is such a true gem and is so loved by so many in our community. I want the vaccine, I want all mandates, everything to be gone. I want full access. And we started off this meeting with such a beautiful thing, talking about sports, health, fitness, the PE building, and there's nothing more uniting than a sports game, whether it's T-ball at the Little League label, football, you name it. Sports really bring people together, and I'm confident that there's brighter days ahead, and that all of this stuff, all these mandates, everything's going to go away, and that we truly are going to be a campus that is truly diverse. It's equitable, it's inclusive of everyone, regardless of what you are, who you are, and I just, my heart goes out to all the moms and grandmothers. And I know we're paying these folks to do this survey, but we have so much data already on how people feel, because we have your emails, I have your messages, and I've met so many people in the community that I just want to say we're with you, and I'm going to continue to support you and your families, because you are the heartbeat of our community. And that's what Santa Barbara City College and in the California Community College in general is inclusive of everyone for this great state that we all love. So thank you, and please give my best to your son and good luck in his golf career.
So Dr. Maria, what are the parameters of what we need in a bond consultant? Are we talking just about messaging? Are we talking about financials? What are the services that we require?
So there's several services that we will require. We have a financial advisor, which actually talked to you at the last meeting, Joanna Bose from K&N. That's one thing. We need bond counsel specifically that actually does have a lot of background in general obligation bonds, and particularly Prop 39. The other piece that's important in this, and we've already done it, is the polling person. And then a public relations person would be advisable. Sometimes that can be a public relations person and a campaign person, but we're not ready for a campaign because we don't have a campaign committee, and we have not made a decision as a college whether to move forward with the general obligation bond. We can hire a public relations person to help us understand the community's needs and go over the survey results with us once we get them. And that's my recommendation to you now, is to have someone come on board to kind of give us their thoughts about whether they think we could win a bond in the community or should go now, or whether we should do further work. And also help us once the survey results are back to look at those too in the light of that. So we don't want to look at a campaign person yet. And frankly, that would all have to be paid from a whole separate campaign, like group that we would have to form if we decide we want to go with something. So right now we're recommending to bring a public relations person on. And we could do a couple of things. This is a professional service, and we could just invite certain people in and talk with them. We could do an RFP, and we could just choose somebody. And I wanted to get your opinion as a board on how you would like us to do this. We had, my understanding is there was a pretty good consultant that worked with us in 2008. And from what I know in the community, I've had a lot of good recommendations for other people that they either have members on their team in the community, or that they've done a lot of work in our community. So wanted to hear from the board what your preferences were. Do you want just to maybe pick some people and talk to them as a board, or a couple members from the committee? Or would you like us to go with an RFP, or would you like us to just choose somebody?
Okay, so just so I'm clear, what we're talking about at this point is a public relations person. Not bond counsel, not the financial advisor, not the campaign person, but a public relations person. And it seems like doing an RFP makes some sense. Unless we just already automatically know of the 2 or 3 people that we want to consider, and we just go right to those people. When you said 2008, were you talking about the bond measure here in 2008?
Yeah. You had a consultant, and again, varying opinions on everybody. That's why I'm talking to the board, because I've had so many opinions passed to me on this that I'm like, okay, we better talk about this. So, but I have had several people recommend that we go back to that consultant. And I also have had people say they don't want to, they want to go out openly. So I'm asking this committee what you would like me to do.
Veronica, you had your hand raised.
Yeah, there's so I mean, there's, as Kindred knows, because you've done a lot of these, and so there's a lot of different steps. What I'm concerned with is that we're getting ahead of ourselves, because right now we still have this mandate. So as of now, my vote is no bond to the community, no, for this very issue that we are not an open access institution and we are not inclusive of everybody. So that is in direct opposition of our mission. So my concern is that you're going to spend, or we would spend all this money, and then we would go out on a bond in a 6-1, because I will vote no to not put this on the ballot unless we get rid of all mandates, because it is unfair and it just does not make sense to genuinely ask someone to pay more money on their property taxes, to raise their taxes for a community college that has shut the door to them. So that continues to be a real issue for me. And then at the same time, it's hard and it's sad, because I spent the whole year 2018 at the hip with Lindsay talking about the P building and talking about the things we need to do. I mean, that's where all my binders came from. I chaired the board in 2018, the facilities, everything, Eric Middleston. So the facilities has been something that I've been so involved in for 9 years on the board now. And to see the college literally shut its doors to people, it's conflicting. And so I want to work with you, Kindred, side by side and get either, whether it's Lou Edwards, who we worked with in the past, and Stradlin and Joka and Carlson, who did the timeline for us. I mean, I have all these documents that are laying here looking at them. I'm ready to go, but every mandate must go away. Otherwise, we're going to go out on a 6-1 vote, and I will not support this bond. So I think we're getting ahead of ourselves. We need to repeal all mandates first before we talk about this going forward.
Dr. Haslam, do you have any comments in this?
Well, I'm trying to address the question that Dr. Murillo put to us. And essentially it is, how do we select this person? Do we do a general RFP, or do we make use of the information that we have? I think it's an operational question that we can certainly weigh in on, but I would feel very comfortable either way. I think the person who's going to do the hiring has an instinct for the kind of personality and level of expertise and experience that the person has that would be legitimate simply to a point. On the other hand, if you felt that you should go out for an RFP, I'd support that. And I do disagree with Veronica in this sense. We haven't shut our campus to anybody. Anybody can come on campus. There are rules that will have to be met in order to be on campus, but we're not shutting our campus down. We're trying to make the campus safe for everybody else. And there's no perfect way of making that judgment. I know that, and I hope so does everybody else. We simply do the best we can with the information we have and the guidelines that are provided by the CDC, and we move forward. But it's not a closed campus, and that implication bothers me.
Well, I agree completely with Dr. Hasl's comments, but I'd ask Dr. Murillo, how would you like to proceed? How do you think? Do we do an RFP or do
Well,
you?
the fairest way to do it is to go out with an RFP and then get the responses back and then review it with the committee.
Do we have time for that?
Yeah, before the survey's done, we could actually, we have, Lindsay's put together a good list of contacts and people that we could send to. And we've done a couple now pretty quickly, and we're not putting out huge, like formal RFPs, but they're basic RFPs to get interest and get cost. And we can do that pretty quickly. They've been doing a really good job in Lindsay's area to do that. So we have a list, we can send it out, and we can use the RFP pretty heavily that we used for the polling. So that's the fairest way to do it. I always like to be as fair as I can be, but I wanted to make sure I checked with the board first.
Fairness is what we want to be. So I support moving ahead with an RFP. You have an idea of who the candidates are, and it doesn't sound like it's going to delay us much. So I think we should move ahead in that fashion.
Okay.
I think Peter supports that concept as well.
I do.
Veronica, you have a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, to Peter's comment, it doesn't seem like we have, Peter, but, I'm still out in the community. I still work. I still talk to moms and dads and grandmas, and there's a lot of kids that aren't coming to campus, and the effect to their mental health is just absolutely tragic when you see a young person whose brain isn't even fully developed yet, and so much of their adult just abilities, social registers of what they're learning, it gets developed within the context of peer groups all the way up until they're 25 years old. And so there's a lot of young people that have not had access to that. And that's a direct result of Santa Barbara City College's mandate. And that's from grandmothers and mothers and aunts and neighbors. It's true, it's happened. I think we did what we did with the information we had. And seeing, as we know now that there's more information, I personally worked every day since July 1st without taking a day off, covering many, many classrooms of many, many people that were sick, even despite having done, what they thought they were supposed to do. And that didn't prevent them from getting sick. And I, gladly stepped up to do everybody's job, as what we do. We step up to serve. But it is two different points of views. And if for those of us that are interfacing with kids and families every single day, it has been a very tragic thing. I myself, an elected official, a board member, I used to be able to literally run after work and run into the administration building. My medical privacy is no one's business. And so I can't run into a building at City College as an elected official because of the bureaucracy and all of the barriers we put up, because I have to do all these different things, go to a desk. What if I just want to run in there because it's a building that is on my property taxes? I should be able to go there. I'm an elected official. And so I am standing with all the other mothers and fathers and all the kids and neighbors in the community. And I know how it feels. And I talk to them, and it's a very heartening thing. So I do urge all of us to think about it, what Justin said. This is a human issue. And if we can't empathize at a very human level with the plea of our neighbors, then we kind of don't deserve to exist as a community college. We should just privatize ourselves and be something else, because a community college is what we no longer are.
Thank you. Dr. Murillo, is there anything else you need to hear from us on the,
I have my direction and I appreciate that. And Ms. Mortensen, I want to thank you for sharing your story today. That was a important story. There are a couple issues you brought up that I will be following up on.
Thank you. So going forward, we don't have another meeting date. Maybe that's appropriate at this time till we see when the poll is going to be done and when it makes sense for us to meet again. So
I think so.
I'm comfortable leaving it
Okay.
undecided. We can figure that out at a later time.
Great, thank you. We appreciate that flexibility. We'll check with our polling with Timothy. We'll get a sense from that. We take the suggestions we heard today. We'll follow up and then we will schedule another meeting for you.
And thanks again for bringing Melissa, I forget her last name, Hedrick, and bringing Eric, who's still with us, to the meeting. They were both very helpful to our understanding on some crucial issues as we move forward. With that, unless there's other comments, we will adjourn. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Robert.
Bye now.